Frank. What's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park. Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to go tonight.
I like death.
Greetings, ghouls, to Do You Want to Party, a Movies by Minute treatment of the 1985 horror classic, Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy, and today I'm joined by a former fellow Music World employee, ask your parents, kids, and a horror fanatic.
Hey, this is Ahmed, aka Horror Savey, is my handle on most places. How y'all doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Long weekend here, so
yeah, exactly, which is a perfect time to get this stuff over and done with.
Yep.
Yeah, so
a lot of free time. It's perfect.
If anyone is seriously following me and all that sort of thing, they'll know that Ahmed actually joined me for quite a few episodes of my first podcast of Welcome to the Slaughtered Lamb, which was another Movies by Minute presentation, but that time of An American Werewolf in London. So he sat in for a couple of key moments, which was kind of cool to him to do as well. Way back in the day when I had really no idea what I'm doing. So not much has changed in the past couple of years.
It's all good. Winging it's the way to go these days.
Exactly. So we'll just start off with a little. How did you come to? We'll just talk like the Return of the Living Dead. How did you come about Return of the Living Dead?
Like the first time I heard of the movie?
Yeah, the first time. Yeah.
Wow. When I was a little kid, I thought that, seeing the cover at the video store, I just assumed sequel to Night of the Living Dead.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I had no idea about the Romero flicks and all that back then. I was just saw Night of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead. Makes sense.
Exactly.
They come back.
Yeah.
That's about it. I had no idea it was a horror comedy for quite a while. And I probably didn't see it until I was later into my teens because I wasn't huge on the zombie flicks.
Okay.
Like as a subgenre,
Right.
But I also didn't know how fun it kind of was. I don't love a lot of horror comedies. There's very select few that I enjoy, this being one of them in the end.
It's a really thin line to be able to get a good one that mixes the two.
Yeah, and something about them, like the new ones, they have to be done extremely well. The old ones, they just have to have that vibe that you can't recreate today.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes it worthwhile.
Right. All right, cool. So, did you like the movie right away? Is it something that you watch constantly, or is it just like?
I don't watch it a ton.
Right.
I try to bust it out every year in around July. Set around the date in the movie.
Right.
But I don't always get it. Like, last year, I think I missed it, and this year I missed it. But the year before, I watched it, and it's been since then since I've seen it.
Right. So, I mean, it's still under rotation, though. It's not like
with all the horror movies that I watch.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true. You do watch a ton of newer stuff too. So,
and now I'm working 6 days a week, so it's like my selection is very narrowed down. So I try to fit in what I can.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. So this is going to be minute 6, and this begins with quotes from Frank. And so minute 6 begins with "Weird Things Go," and ends with 2,4,5 trioxin, it's called. So this particular minute itself is crucial to the history of what the actual movie is. It basically it grounds this particular movie in as actual reality. It's a trope where a movie refers to another movie in its current movie as reality, as an alternate to what really happened. So it's just Frank being asked about the weirdest thing starts beautifully pulling Fred into his storytelling, because James Karen and Tom Williams, the two of them, even though it's their first time acting together, and this movie was shot in chronological order for the most part, but all the stuff at the early beginnings of the movie were shot as early in the shooting schedule. So the two of them work so well together. They play off of each other so well, like they've been together forever, but this is the first time they've acted together. And it's just a fantastic thing to watch. It's like they look like they're connected from the get-go. And and you can see how the Frank character really knows how to pull in the Freddy character hook, line, and sinker in his storytelling, and he is
the chemistry on screen is really solid.
Exactly, and it's I mean, of all the characters, these two are so fabulous together, and I'm glad that they're teamed up, because if you had any sort of other person, like the original idea for it was Dan O'Bannon himself was going to be in the Frank role. But it wasn't until like he saw James Karen come in and try out for the role, and as soon as he saw James start like reading off lines, and he was all like, "Yep, nope, I'm definitely not going to do this role. I definitely am stepping away. I'm just going to direct this film," which is kind of neat to have seen. So so previously, Freddie had asked him, "What's the weirdest sort of thing?" And this whole entire scene takes place in one room. We're in the office. They've just Freddy's just been experiencing the one cadaver in the freezer and whatnot, so he's a little shocked. We have to just come back from being introduced to the punks, so that was what the previous minute was and all that. Okay, so with that being said, a little bit of I guess a little bit of zombie history. Now, obviously, you're not big into the zombie genre, but you are aware of the Night of the Living Dead.
Oh yeah, no,
and George A. Romero himself, right?
Day of the Dead,
exactly.
The remakes,
yeah,
and a bunch of other zombie flicks. I like different zombie flicks. Like I'm a big fan of like the kind of variation. Like I like the Dawn of the Dead remakes. I like when they run fast.
Right. That was actually going to be a question a little later on.
Yeah.
Are you a zombie fan, and what do you like, slow or fast? So I take it you prefer the fast zombies then.
I prefer fast zombies. I think they're more. I know it makes less sense because they're decaying, but at the same time, it's scarier to me.
Yes, no, for sure.
Not be able to just walk away.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing with this. That's the thing that this particular movie has. It has both slow and fast. It has those that can't move fast because there isn't much left to them or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm
cool
and then the freshly created ones are able to move. Like, So Night of the Living Dead, which took place which was released in 1968, is a classic in the horror film genre. I mean, it was made on a shoestring budget. A bunch of people just came together, wanted to make this. They had a lot of history in like making commercials prior to this and whatnot. They got some funding from some dentists and all that to put together the shoestring budget, and over a couple of weeks made this movie that became a phenomenon. It was slow to build, but I think it's basically the cornerstone. It's like, you can think of it up there in the genre of your classic Universal monsters and all of that. You can class it as an introduction.
The original,
exactly. The original. Oh no, for the original, once you get beyond the original, it changes. But that's the thing with the way Romero did those movies, is he changed with the decades that the movies came out. One was all about consumerism, and another one was all about like the militarization of everything sort of thing, and so he ended up doing that with it and all that. So the original, again, if you don't know what Night of the Living Dead is, you're probably listening to the wrong podcast.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Exactly. The most,
at some point,
one of the most iconic lines from that movie. Yeah, exactly. So it's basically just there's no explanation for there. In the background of the movie, there's a couple of explanations for why this might be happening, but there is no dominant explanation, which is fantastic, which is what it should be in a zombie film. I mean, it makes, a lot of the zombie films have some sort of, like this movie itself, we find out it's this chemical that the 2,4,5-trioxin that reanimates the corpses. But again, centered in the reality of this movie, that's where the Night of the Living Dead, and because he couldn't do that, he had to basically just come up with another reason for doing it. So basically, a group of people get stuck in a farmhouse while the dead start culminating around the house, and they basically not only fight off the zombies, they fight off themselves and all that. Tensions rise. There's a lot of like race that comes into it. There's a lot of like sexism comes into the story and all that. But at the end, things technically work out. I mean, they don't really work out as a zombie
Yeah.
film, but it's still the way it works out in the end. It's a very satisfying ending, and of course, at the very ending, we find that none of our characters that were introduced to the movie actually survived the final film, because technically the final girl, who is not actually a girl, ends up surviving the whole entire night, only to get shot, as been mistaken as a zombie at the very end of the movie, which is a tragic ending, but I think it's a fantastic way to steer away from the norm, like knowing that, hey, we at least we have a hero that survives. So
yeah.
And like I said, George A. Romero is the man who was mainly responsible for it. Like, there's a group of them that came together to do the movie, and like I said, he took up the mantle of continuing on with the series. Now the writer of this particular movie, of Night of the Living Dead, who is John Russo, was also worked on Night of the Living Dead with George A. Romero. He was part of the writing team, the production, and all that sort of thing. He actually acted as one of the zombies in it, as I'm pretty sure a lot of people who worked on the movie worked in the movie as well.
Yeah.
But when it came to doing another film, he felt that he wanted to go along the more like suspense action way, and Romero wanted to do the more like psychological effect, and that's why we ended up with like the next one, which is Dawn of the Dead. And but so they technically ended up splitting ways. I mean, not like, as far as I could find, there was no ill repute between them, but one wanted to do one thing, one wanted the other way.
Yeah, creative differences.
Exactly. So it was Russo who was able to take the Living Dead part with him, so he can produce any movie that has Living Dead in it. While Romero, if you look at all the movies, the only one that has Night of the Living Dead was the first one. It's all Dawn of the Dead and so forth, and Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead.
Hence my confusion as a kid with
exactly, which is totally understandable. Exactly, totally understandable.
Yeah.
I'll admit that I think I saw Return of the Living Dead after I had seen both Night and Dawn, knowing that this wasn't, and then shortly after I saw Day. So I saw them pretty close to each other, because when I first started watching horror films, it was like, oh, I want to get more. And Romero's I saw actually on broadcast TV on a Halloween night is when I first saw it.
Nice.
So my first scene was like full screen,
cut
off the edges, and
I get
commercial breaks and all that sort of thing.
That's how I got introduced with the Universal stuff. I was renting them from the library as a kid on VHS. So
yes, exactly.
It wasn't exactly the transfers we get today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so that's how that happens and all that. So then as the minute goes on, Frank just continues. Don't you start. You just keep looking out that window. Oh my God, I can't believe she's already starting to like. The more I'm getting into it, she's all like, "Oh, you seem to be getting at a crucial part.
Yeah.
Let's start making some more noise."
Shields your anticipation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So as after he basically asks about the Night of the Living Dead, Frank is still playing up this whole entire fantastic story again, pulling in Fred. Once he asks, Fred's all like, yeah, I know that movie. It's like the one where the zombies take over the world and all that sort of thing. Fred's all like he seems like really proud of himself knowing what he's talking about. Like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's that movie. Yeah. And then Frank turns around going like, hey, true case, happened in real life. And Fred's like having like, no, there's no way that it is. And they just start playing each other. So he like again, it goes to the acting that
for sure. You can see him kind of lean in and get into the conversation.
Exactly.
It's very realistic how they portray
that. And this is now when we get into like Fred's not having any of it, and he says it's impossible, that can't really happen. And of course, then Frank tells him, hey, he had to change around the facts. Like, the government was going to sue his ass if he like actually put the actual things out. So he changed a couple of facts around and all that. But then, so then he it turns out,
Funny story actually involving
yeah,
that. Not to just a sidetrack for a
right,
second about how they explained that in the movie. I
Mhm.
was camping, I don't know how many years back with a bunch of buddies and one of their girlfriends, and we sat around the fire one night, and I think one of them brought a portable DVD player, and we brought the Blair Witch Project,
Oh, okay.
and we were actually watching that, and in the same way, I convinced her that it was real
Nice.
and that there was issues with the rights and the parents suing them, and that's why it didn't come out. Like it's why it was so much trouble and controversy. I had her freaking out for the
Oh
whole
my God,
night
that's
before I actually
amazing. Because if
revealed
you,
that
yeah,
it
because if you
wasn't
didn't
real.
know anything prior to that, if that was
Oh
her
yeah.
first, oh, oh my God, that is so fantastic. And it was amazing how many people had actually got caught up in that, how
Yeah.
they were
Well,
convinced.
because it was, I still think, probably one of the best POV found footage movies of all time because it
Oh,
doesn't
for
feel like a
sure.
movie at
For
all.
sure. No,
And none of them
it
feel like
does
they're
not.
acting at all.
No, it doesn't. And they
Yeah.
did a fantastic job. Not only that, the marketing was so beautifully done
Brilliant.
too. I
Yeah.
mean, it was at a time when that was like
And we
first
didn't know
of the
about
viral.
editing and all this stuff
Exactly.
as
Yeah.
much. Like,
Exactly. For
CG was
sure.
just becoming
Yeah,
a
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And just the internet was still new as
Mm-hmm.
at the time as well.
Mm-hmm. Bare
And
bones.
while I was under the understanding that yes, this is not real and all that sort of thing, but
Yeah.
the fact that I did go along with it, I went, oh, let's see what this website is like. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like I had a bunch of friends that are like, wow, this is fantastic. We got to see this
Yeah.
movie and all that. That's what made us go see the movie. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this has got to pay off. This doesn't pay off. This is going to be like the worst thing ever. But
Oh, I think
so
I love that movie. I thought it was
oh,
fantastic. But
fantastic. So we
yeah.
went to see it, and it was at a time, obviously, that you couldn't buy tickets in advance. So we went
No,
to
no. Yeah.
our local theater, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, the early show was sold out.
Oh wow, yeah.
Which
It was a
understand
lot
it
of hype.
was I think it was the Saturday that it had come out.
Mm.
So we decided, okay, we got tickets for the late show. Then we went over to friggin' Boston Pizza. Took forever for our food to come, so we had to like scarf all of our food down because like, oh, we
Yeah.
got like the movie, and like because we didn't have as much time as we thought. And so I'm sitting in the theater. It's a jam-packed theater. It's one of the smaller theaters too, which is
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate, right? So I'm sitting on the very end of the aisle. So I'm up against the wall of the
Yeah.
theater. And so there's this screen we're close enough that it's taking up a good portion of my vision. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get motion sickness, but if you
But
have a complete full meal sitting in your stomach and you're in
off to
a
the side.
packed theater and
Yeah.
you're like not center, so I'm getting like
There wasn't a lot of
queasy.
movies of that kind at the time,
No,
if
no, for
any.
sure.
Like,
No,
so
no, no.
it wasn't something you were used to.
Yeah. And so I'm getting put off by the movie. I'm enjoying the movie,
Mm.
but what I'm physically
Yeah, the
experiencing
handy
right
cam,
now
right?
is the handy cam, the shaky cam was
Yeah.
just a little too much. And then that final shot of Michael standing in the corner.
Still one of the best shots, I
Oh my
think, in like
God,
horror
it
history.
stuck with me for like weeks afterwards. I would close my eyes and see that image, and I'd like, okay, opening my eyes, I'm looking around my
Mm-hmm.
room, I'm in my room, sort of thing, and all that. But it was so beautifully done, and I'm
Yeah.
also thrilled that they waited like a couple of months before they allowed the actors to come forth and all that sort of thing, which
Yep.
just added more onto it, making it such
Yep.
a
They did the whole Cannibal Holocaust deal.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was just, yeah, Blair Witch was probably, and seeing it in the theater was probably the best way to see it.
That's great. Like, but
Yeah.
here, the funny thing with Blair Witch is that like you can enjoy that movie on any screen because it doesn't feel like a movie.
Exactly.
Right?
It looks like an actual
Yeah.
documentary. The
You
way
don't
they
need
handle
the
it. Yeah.
surround sound. You don't need any
Nope.
of that stuff. It's not
No,
what does it.
exactly. No,
Yeah.
for sure. Did you ever, I mean, you probably have. You've seen Book of Shadows?
Oh, I have Book
Blair
of
Witch
Shadows.
2?
I have like the reboot / sequel to the first one. I'm a big Blair Witch fan.
Okay. So
Yeah.
did you watch, when you watched Book of Shadows, did you watch the digital version or did you watch the VHS version?
VHS first.
So the
I didn't
VHS
have
version.
DVD for a long
Oh, okay.
time.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
know about the video differences between the movie and all that, how if you watch scenes in reverse, there will be letters that flash up on the
Oh,
screen.
the code.
Yeah, the code in
There
the
was like
code
a
in the movie.
code that
Yes, the
came
code in
up.
the movie that is only
I
when
wish
you
I remember more details of
Yeah.
it, but I remember
Yeah.
thinking that was the coolest thing when it
I
came
know,
out.
and it was a
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
You only saw it when it was on home video, unfortunately,
Hmm.
because that's the only way they could have done something like it. But I thought that was a
Yeah.
fantastic way to add back into the movie. Wasn't that great to begin with, but
I'm a fan of the sequel. It's to me, it's
yeah,
underrated. It's underrated. Like to watch it, it has to kind of be watched as its own movie. It had a lot of really creepy
true,
factors to
true,
it.
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that alone to me stands tall a bunch over so many movies that just don't have that creep factor like in
Really?
it at all. But like I don't know. There's something about when you get witchcraft right, it's so terrifying versus like when you do it in a cheesy way.
Right.
And I feel like they did a lot of things right. I don't know. And also like at the time, it was just cool. Like the soundtrack, everything like was so
No, that's
enjoyable
the other
about the
thing too. Yeah,
movie.
no, it did have a really
Yeah.
good
The nice thing
soundtrack. Yeah.
when the DVD came out was it had that flip side with the soundtrack on the reverse. So the DVD on top, and you
That's
flip
right,
it
it
over and
did,
you got the
didn't it?
soundtrack.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's
Yeah,
not a
yeah, yeah.
common thing these days, but
No, definitely something you will not be able to, you can't repeat
yeah.
something like that. No, no. I mean,
Hmm.
people try, and every once in a while you get something that has moments of greatness, but in
Yeah,
all
yeah.
it's not, oh, well, that was all right, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, Blair Witch was definitely the
Mm,
best of what you could get out of that.
definitely. Without showing you anything ever. It
For
did a
sure.
great job.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So back to the movie. We got
Mm, Charlie
we got
Living
yeah,
Dead.
no, yeah, yeah. That's why I have guest hosts
Yeah.
on, because it brings more of a conversation to the me
Yeah.
just spewing facts at a blank screen and people just listening to my one voice going through it in that
Yeah.
monotone sort of low voice that I have when I talk to the podcast by themselves.
That's all good. It can
But
happen
yeah,
when you're on
so
your own.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Frank again starts to go into a little bit of detail of what actually did happen, how a chemical
Hmm.
spilt and filtered down into like the morgue, and the body started bouncing around and all that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And he's totally, again, like I keep mentioning, he's totally got Frank hook, line, and sinker, and it's fantastic. And through the next minute is I mean, obviously it's not in this minute, but in the next minute he continues on with the story. He gets more into details and all that sort of thing, and then we have probably the best jump scare at the beginning of the movie, where
Hmm.
the phone call goes and friggin' Fred seems like he shits his pants, is like he
Yeah.
throws like a pencils all over the place and all that sort of thing. But yeah, that's next minute. Spoiler for the next minute, but again,
Yeah.
if you're listening to a movie by minute, you probably have already seen the movie. So yeah. So that brings us
Hmm.
to the end of the movie where he mentions the 2,4,5 trioxin,
Yeah.
which is our chemical that allows the dead to come back to life, or at least
Yeah.
from his perspective, they just jump around a little. All right. So, according to the script, which is The Return of the Living Dead story and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon, the version that I have is the revised version from October 1983, which is based on the story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Rickey, and Russell Steiner. So basically, the conversation between Frank and Fred in this particular minute is pretty much exactly the same as it is. There's a couple of embellishments on words here. There's one line that's a little longer. There's a couple of changes and all that. At this point in the movie, a lot of it is pretty much word for word. I have run into a
Yeah.
couple of sequences prior where there's like an extra line thrown in, or between the time that they leave the freezer, and the movie then cuts to the punks. But after after the two of them leave the freezer and head towards the office, there's a little sequence there, which is not in the final film. It doesn't seem to be that much of a big difference. Apparently the freezer door doesn't shut properly. You have to make sure you slam
Yeah.
it shut, right? And after he points that out to him as they walk away, apparently the freezer door then unlocks itself and opens again. So
Yeah.
which is not in the final film, which I don't think is really relevant because that sort of thing doesn't play into the final film anyways. But I think
Yeah.
at one point it might have been some sort of thing. But yeah, so this particular minute is pretty much just the conversation that Frank has with Freddie about talking about Night of the Living Dead and how it was real, and Bob's your uncle. So unfortunately, there's not much more difference between them. Now, I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
later on, it turns out it looks like it's being a lot of like words are being altered. It's obviously looks like day of sort of thing. Every once in a while, someone will change one word into another or say it in a different order or something like that. But for the most part, it looks like, because that's the thing with having the director being the writer, you can change things on the fly more than likely. But it also looks like, from what I've listened from the commentary tracks, is that James Karen is a good source of, hey, how about we do this sort of thing? How about we do that? One of the big stories is, like, I watched the documentary, The Return to the Living Dead, where they bring back a bunch of the actors and a bunch of crew members to talk about the movie as they go through it. And in it, James Karen mentions that the point where his character basically takes himself out of the movie, where he puts himself into the fire, is he suggested it at the beginning of the movie because he knew later on in the movie there would be doing a lot of sequences where they'd be out in the rain, like getting back and forth between the warehouse and whatnot, that he didn't want to have to deal with being wet. So he suggested early on that the line, I mean, I'm going to bring it off when it comes in later, but it's just a great example of someone who knows how to do this type of movie and working with someone that was like, hey, that's a great idea. So he suggested, how about Frank take himself out this way, and then we could just have a little sequence where he says, I know how to run that machine at the very beginning, as there are so many Chekhovs this and Chekhovs that. It's like all set. There's all setups. There's nothing but setups in the first like 10 minutes of this movie. Like everything that you know that's going to come up is all placed like, oh, there's that. So it's just fantastic. And again, working with the director, who is also the writer, is also definitely goes helping with that sort of situation.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Over on the commentary track, with director-writer Dan O'Bannon and production designer William Stout, Dan O'Bannon continues from the last minute, talking again about having his cast performing their lines like a Howard Hawks film, where the conversation seemed garbled and certain words be highlighted to get the information across. Then he mentions about this particular minute, describing how George Romero had changed all the facts around for Night of the Living Dead, and how they, Dan O'Bannon and his crew, got the true facts. William Stout then interjects about how they saved money by shooting all the interior shots in a warehouse in Burbank. In the same place that they had their film offices, they also built the sets. Dan points out that the warehouse exteriors was a real location in the downtown LA area. The interiors was all constructed inside
What's the
another
weirdest
warehouse.
thing you've ever saw in here?
All right, so at this point,
Night.
what is your history? Yeah, we talked about your history with.
Hey, we gonna party
What
tonight
is
or
your
what?
history? Because you do a lot of horror stuff
Where are we gonna
on
party?
Instagram and
I
all
don't
your
know,
social
somewhere.
medias and all that.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we
How
can't.
did you
The
start
cops
with
would shoot us if we
horror?
go back so hard.
Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to
I like death.
If
Like
you can
I was
remember that
saying,
far back, you
it
know,
was-
being an old man.
I know, right? No, I still, my memory's pretty solid. 2 years old. I think I said this last time we ran the werewolf, American Werewolf pod, but it was my first memory being around 2 years old, my first solid memory of watching A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, sitting in my sister's lap while they were watching the movie. I was like 2 years old, and they had rented
That's kind of
it,
a rough
and-
one to. I forgot about that. That's a kind of a rough one to start with.
Yeah,
especially
it was
that
the
young.
pool party scene, him chasing everybody around the pool,
Yeah.
slaughtering everybody. Apparently, I loved it. From there, growing up, it was actually really neat because around that time in the early, like super early 90s, the Universal Monsters came back in as a trend again.
Yeah.
And it was perfect timing for me because I was watching, like, I wasn't allowed to watch the colored stuff.
Yeah.
Because my mom didn't want me watching horror movies at such a young age. Like, you know, after I understood what was going on, it mattered.
Right.
And so I would watch, Frankenstein, Wolfman. I was big on the black and white stuff.
Yeah.
Even like, what was it, Frankenstein, Wolfman Meet Abbott and Costello,
The
like
Abbott and Costello,
a
yeah,
bunch of
no,
stuff like
the
that,
same here. Me and
right?
my brother were introduced to the Universal
Yeah.
Monsters early too. Yeah.
And at the time, it was trending, and there was little like I remember thinking Burger King had Universal Monster like toys or something like that,
Right. Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think
yeah.
there was even Pogs coming around, and oh man, it was like I was loving it. It was a thing again, and there was cartoons like, and eventually there was
Mm-hmm.
like Mummies Alive and like a
Yep,
bunch of
yep.
different Universal kind of monster spin-offs into little things, and it only grew from there. I remember when Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas eventually came out too. I was kind of like, oh, I really want to see this. It looks creepy. And my mom was like, she didn't know what the hell she was looking at. She was like, nah, I don't want you watching this. And
Oh
it's funny because like
no.
I had seen worse. Like I was allowed to watch like rated R action movies, like I could. It was fine for me to watch Van Damme,
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah,
kick
yeah.
Dolph Lundgren into a wood chipper, but that was a concern. And then of course there was Are You Afraid of the Dark, which I've always been a huge fan of.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
I would never miss that. And of course YTV had Dark Knight on how I was always a big Halloween. A holiday is my favorite time of year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Every October, YTV back in the day would do Dark Knight. In which case it was like all their little what they called them PJs, the hosts, I think.
Yeah.
And they would do this little skits and whatnot, and like hype everyone up for Halloween, and they do a bunch of like Halloween episodes or horror episodes of things. View for the Dark. Eventually, Goosebumps premiered on there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they would lead up to a movie or something at the very end. I think it was
Right.
like safe stuff. I think like Poltergeist played or whatnot.
Yeah.
But
Which
I was
again,
in love with
Poltergeist, James Cameron. James Karen is from
James,
Poltergeist.
yeah. Yep. And the marketing was huge back then. It's not like it is today. Like Kool-Aid would always release like like Halloween flavors. You had like Scary Black Cherry, Kool-Aid in partnership with YTV's Dark Knight, and like everything was great.
Nowadays, you just have the
occasional
chocolates and all that sort of thing, but
that's
nothing
the thing.
else.
That's Canada. Canada fell off hard.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
and it's one of the few things I'm ashamed of in this country, because I see the U.S. and I'm like, they're still doing it right, and
they are
dropping the ball massively, and it sucks.
Yeah, they have already have Spirit Halloweens open.
I know, and they have a permanent location too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
They have enough going on that they were able to make a movie. That's awesome.
Did you end up watching that movie? Did you end up watching that movie?
I totally forgot it existed till I.
Oh my god! It was. You know what? It's kind of interesting because they actually use their own store-made props that come to life and all that sort of thing. I mean,
they get to sell it.
It's kind of neat because they have like a nowadays Christopher Lloyd, like playing the creepy old guy in charge of the place and all that, and it's cute. It's definitely a kids movie though. It's definitely like a Goosebumps sort of feel to it and all that,
which I'm cool with that too. Like I don't have to have everything be R-rated.
But you know what? If that's what you're looking for, it's actually not too bad of a movie. Yeah, just as long as you realize you're watching. You just reminded
me. I'm gonna watch it this October for sure.
Just remember, you are watching a kids.
Oh, totally. I have the new Goosebumps movies, and like even the new version, like the mini series of Are You Afraid of the Dark. I was a fan of those. Like I'm fine with it. Like if it's supposed to be a kids movie, you can enjoy it.
Yeah,
for sure. It's supposed to be for adults, and I feel like it's dumbed down to the point where like this is for children. Then
that's when you have a problem. Yes, yeah. If you hit your audience goal, then you're fine with it. Yeah, for sure. So, anyways, when did you start watching like more modern horror? Like when did you get back into your Freddy's? All that.
Funny enough, before I started working at Music World, when I was in my early to mid-teens, I was still buying VHS at the time. The DVD was out, but like I didn't have a DVD player. No one in my house did.
Yeah.
And so all the VHS was marked down like crazy. And it's funny because nowadays the VHS horror thing has blown up huge.
Yeah, I know.
I used to have everything on VHS. I had the sleepaway camps, and I had all the random horror movies, all the Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Child's Play, Hellraiser, all the classics plus randoms, Prom Night 2, Prom Night 3.
Right.
Like all this stuff I had on VHS, and I was buying them for like $4 or $5 a pop.
Yeah.
And that's when I got heavy into it. I watched everything.
Nice.
And I would VHS, and then I would go rent stuff, and I would watch a bunch more, So that was when I got heavy into the newer stuff. It was probably mid to late 90s. And then when I just started into like the early 2000s, and then when I was in my later like later teens, early adulthood, I got the job at Music World, and then it just continued from there. And I spent all my paychecks.
Oh, that was dude, I did the exact same thing. I was buying friggin' crazy
catalog, and we were ordering stuff in.
Yeah, exactly.
Stock,
let's order this into the store.
Yeah.
Let's order this into the
special
store.
edition. Like we're not
exactly.
Let's order it.
Oh, that was that was the best thing, but the worst thing as well.
It was.
There was no money left over after a paycheck. Yeah.
I think we kept that store going. The whole company, possibly.
Pretty much. Yeah.
After we left, they went under.
Oh man, yeah. Now nowadays, so like, do you just watch at home? Like, because you do post a lot of stuff. I don't go to the
theaters a lot.
Yeah, you don't. I was about to say,
I don't go to the theaters a lot. No. I don't enjoy the theaters these days so much.
Okay.
The audiences to me have very much become loud and obnoxious for the most part. Every time I go to see something, like I'm just getting annoyed by people like yapping or like, drunk like 40-year-olds just like ruining the movie, and I'm like, bro, like go do this somewhere else. Like, come on. And I get it. I get a little bit of temper problems sometimes with that stuff, so I don't bother going. Okay, that's good. That's good. So to avoid that. The drive-in is great. Luckily, we have a drive-in that's still open. That can be really fun. But honestly, for the most part, things come to streaming so quickly now that I can watch it at home, and I've got my entertainment system at home that's like pretty top notch for my standards.
Right. Yeah.
And it's super enjoyable to watch stuff here. So I like it here. I like being able to get snacks and pause it and order pizza and do whatever, like it's,
I mean that is the total especially
it's the sleepover feeling that you get at home still as an adult that you just can't get at the theater.
No, for sure, yeah. And you're not
a lot
paying
of new stuff to me is pretty disappointing.
Yeah, you're not paying out the nose for something. Yeah. You'd rather pay like $1 or $2 to rent something and then be kind of disappointed than paying $20 and being kind of disappointed and being like,
because I watch new stuff now and I'm like, when is this going to end? Like I can barely stay awake. Like I'm not enjoying this at all. There's very few new things that hit theaters, at least. Most of the good stuff doesn't hit theaters. So,
true, that is true, especially nowadays. Yeah.
In the horror genre, especially.
Yeah. But so do you have like Shudder or something like that, or you just?
I have Shudder. I've got Netflix. I've got Crave. I've got Disney. I've got Prime.
Okay, so you've covered
and I've got my collection. Which,
plus
has slowed and growing since new movies started.
I was just about to ask, have you still purchased? Like I've realized that I haven't bought
anything. I upgrade 4Ks to like absolute favorites sometimes, and that's it. The rest of the stuff is Blu-ray mostly, some DVDs, but. Like recently, like picking up random stuff on 4K.
Right.
I think the Crow 4K was one of the last kind of not really horror movie, but
I understand. Yeah, but it's one of those. It's one of those. It's one of those iconics. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, there it is, right there. Yeah. Oh, is that the Batman '89? Yeah, nice. Oh, that's a great trio there. Scream 4. So.
Scream 4 is not my favorite Scream at all.
But it's a cool poster, though.
My favorite Scream poster.
Yeah, no, that is it. Yeah, I will give you points on that. I will give you points on that.
The poster, I never see it anywhere either, and I'm like, why didn't they think of that like earlier? Like that's genius.
Yeah, no, that is actually quite the.
Why did they wait till 4? We had the floating heads dimension effect. That's the thing, though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so this was fantastic. I want to thank you for joining me for this minute of this very.
Thanks for the invite.
Hey, not a problem. Hopefully, I can get you back for a future episode. Is there any particular minute that you might want to come back and chat about? If anything, you think
chat. Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, I'll just throw out a number, and you're like, yeah, if I can get there, I'll get there, sort of thing.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So you want to give the audience your I'll still put them in the liner notes your
if you want to check me out on Instagram, like I said, Horror Savey, no special spelling, no anything. That's my tag, my handle everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, mostly I'm on Instagram, even Xbox, whatever it is, it's always Horror Savey. I haven't done anything on TikTok or Twitter in forever. On YouTube, I have my podcast that I think is kind of dead right now. I haven't heard from my partner in a while. Standing in the Horror section, so you can check us out there on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music.
All right.
Very much a generic horror chat where we kind of sound like we're meeting up in the horror section every episode and just chatting about whatever's going on.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
That's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. So once again, thank you for joining me. And audience, I'd like to thank you for listening in to the first episode of my first guest and all that. So hopefully from now on, they'll be just as entertaining as this one was. At least I was entertained. I hope the audience was too. And more than likely, you already have found us because we are now starting with this episode on our own individual feed. It is the Do You Want to Party is the actual feed instead of going to the Planet Geek. I'll still be dropping the episodes on the Planet Geek feed in the near future, but they're not going to be timed up with this. I want to build this particular feed from the get-go. So if you've been here the past couple of days, episode 1 through 5 have already premiered and have been re-released onto this in order. And now this is episode 6 or minute 6, however you want to look at it. So again, thank you, Ahmed, for joining me. And I will see everyone next week. Please tune in, and there you go. Oh, one last thing. If you, yes, exactly. Do you want to party? If anyone has any questions or any concerns, if they want to bring up any sort of thing that we talked about and all that, you can reach out to the podcast through our email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com, and we can continue on a conversation and maybe even bleed into an episode every once in a while. Ooh, bleed into an episode. I like that. All right.
Right? That works.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take it easy.
You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want to Party, a Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Bluesky, search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends.
Here we go. All right.
All right.
So greetings, ghouls, to Do You Want to Party? A minute by... Again, I messed it already up. I'm looking at a script and still ended up missing out.
It's all good, man.
Okay. And I'm just going to pause for a second because my dog is barking. Because the dog always decides to wait until you were lying still for like an hour. And now that I'm talking, you want to go out for a walk?
Yep.
I can't do this. I can't do this. I've got someone online. Look, you can see his picture right there. Look at that handsome fellow there, huh? Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna stop this right now. I'm gonna get back to you in like 5 minutes, okay? Is that okay?
All right, that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop this and then we'll get back and we'll pick up from the beginning of this minute description and all that sort of thing. Okay, I will stop this and then hopefully 5 minutes will do. Okay, end meeting for all. Talk to you in a bit.